Hey gang, welcome back to Jade's Garage. Today's video, I'm going to be adding seam sealer to the 68 Mustang known as Jade. If you like videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to see more. So as I said, I went over the whole car. I sanded the hood, I sanded the deck lid, I sanded the fenders, I sanded the valance panels, I sanded the whole body of the car looking for low areas or bad spots. And I found some which I needed to address with some body filler. I was surprised to find some of these dents. I didn't realize that they were there, but that is why I do this stuff. So everything has now been sanded and it all looks great. Now of course it will get one more round of high build, and some of those areas that I found can be addressed with high build. You know, if they were a very shallow little pit, the high build will fill that up and take care of it. And as I said, other areas I added body filler to take care of those other dents. Everything's looking great, and now I want to move on and get seam sealer in place before I go to the next round of high build. So I want to get ready to do the seam sealing on this car. I'll go over a couple things that I had to take care of. There were some low spots on this panel for some reason, so I had to fill those. Of course, I talked about this already. And a couple areas on this door that I sanded out the low spots on it, or filled the low spots and then resanded. And I think that was about it. Oh, I did have one minor thing there which I talked about, at least I think I talked about. I know it's been a while since I've started on this part of the process, but everything else is ready for me to go forward. I think I have to do a little sanding yet on the rocker panel, which I'm not going to worry about right now because I want to focus on getting the seam sealer done so that I can finish this video. So I have cleaned out the trunk. I think it's the first time I've had it cleaned out since I started the project. And I wanted to show you a couple things. You know, the original material here is kind of a soft tar-like stuff. I'm not removing that. I'm leaving it there. It's been there all this time. Same way over here. I'm going to leave that in place. Now I do have a little bit of a hole right here. That'll get filled with seam sealer. And I'm going to kind of build this up around this corner. That's kind of minor. I do have to add seam sealer here where this quarter panel, or tail panel meets the trunk panel. So I'll have to fill that. I'll probably add some down in the bottom here where the trunk drop off and the quarter panel meet. Any kind of areas like that, you can see it, maybe a little bit of light coming through in places. So I'll have to address those. The bigger concern I have is addressing these sort of things where you have this seam, this overlap, a little here. If you remember when I did these quarter panels, I saved this portion of the quarter panel and this upper lip or flange or upper corner and added on out here the new panel. So this has not been broken, and I may not even mess with that. I may add a layer. I'm not sure yet. I will run seam sealer around here, around the tail light or the tail panel. I may even take a hammer. I see this gap's a little fat. I may dolly that in just a little bit to make it less of a gap. And then of course down here, any areas where you're going to have an overlap here, you know, you want to take care of those. Also up here in these corners where the roof panel meets the deck filler, and of course the jambs, I'll go over those, and the overlap here where the quarter panel meets the rocker panel. So that'll be another thing I need to address. Otherwise, you know, there'll be some, if I see anything that's broken around here, I'll address it. I may add a small amount here because it's showing an edge. So I may have to do something with that. I'm going to add some here, all up in this area, because I had to clean that out. I'm not going to mess with any of this. leave that alone. And same thing, I think there's some that come loose on this side, so I may do an overlap coat on that as well. Anyway, that's what I'm working on. So I think what I'll do to make this easier is I'll remove the deck lid, and then I'll address some minor things and then start showing you how I do this. So I'm going to start with this piece right here, the rocker panel to the quarter panel. I'm going to take a piece of standard 3/4 inch tape and I'm going to make a line. Now, hopefully I don't block the camera very much. Let me see if I can change position here. I'm going to create a line, and I want to go just inside of the turn, let's say, where the quarter panel starts to bend into the flange. Then I'll put another piece. Same way, I want to try to get to where it's in the turn of the rocker panel. I don't want to I'm trying to stay within that edge if I can. The idea being that I want as a minimal edge showing. And you may have to reset a couple times till you find the happy spot. Okay. Obviously, I'm wearing gloves for a reason. So what you'll do, and there's a couple ways you could do this probably. You could probably use a brush if you wanted to. Typically, and I'm using, should say, brushable Evercoat seam sealer. I'll just put some on my glove, on the finger, and start pressing it in to that gap. And it may take several swipes because that gap could extend further up into the panel. You know, like if it doesn't fit totally flush, you may have to do this a few times. Also, you may end up doing this procedure more than once, because if you have a little, if the sealer shrinks, you may not be comfortable with how shallow it is. But again, that's going to be up to you. I just know what I look for as a finished product. And also, keep handy a paper towel and even some lacquer thinner, because you may need to clean some stuff up. So that's that one, and that's that one. Twist up your tape and set it aside. So that looks good to me. I can show you a close-up of that in just a second. But it's really that simple. You know, when it comes to doing this kind of seam. And then, you know, if you want to keep using your glove, get a paper towel and some lacquer thinner and clean it up. In fact, if you wanted to, if it was a little sketchy looking, you could put some lacquer thinner on the glove and do a quick swipe, and that'll help settle things in as well. But I'm happy with that. I'm gonna leave that alone. Here's more of a close-up look. Now that little corner there, I will add more later. I'm not gonna mess with this right now because I have to do more in that corner anyway. So, word of advice, if you keep messing with this stuff, it's gonna make a mess. If you need to come back later and add more, do it. But for now, I'm gonna leave that alone. Okay, now here, I have my overlap of the quarter to the B-pillar. And I did scuff this. I scuffed it with 180 and then I cleaned it off. So there's a couple ways you can approach this. One, you could run a tape line and follow that pattern so you have a clean edge that you can work with. But then you end up with, how do you tape it on the inside? I mean, you could tape it if you wanted to. Another idea is you take one of these little chip brushes that you get from Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever, and you cut it down. So, you know, you can kind of calculate it, I guess. I'm going to cut off about 3/4 of an inch here just to make it a little smaller. And with that, what you can do is kind of just brush it in. Okay. Now, it all depends on how you want it to look. There are some people, they want this to disappear. So I've seen people use body filler and fill this in completely, and that's up to them. Of course, this car, the quarters have been replaced, so it doesn't look factory anyway because there's no spot welds showing. Everything has been smooth on this. The other option you could do is, again, use your glove and just apply some and just follow that shape. So I may start with just using the glove and just see how it looks and go from there. So I'm going to take a small amount and just put it in that little trough and just see what happens. And again, this is where the lacquer thinner comes into play, because you can clean some of this up. Now, you will notice there are marks showing, like where I've contacted it and leaving a trail of material. The beauty of it is I'm doing this between coats of high build. So as long as I get this a fairly smooth transition in these corners on these edges and everything, the high build is going to cover all this, and it'll take care of some of that transition. It'll make it blend in. I actually kind of like this. I think this is all I'm going to do on this side. You just take your time with it. But just know, as I say, take your time, but just know this stuff will tack up really fast. So, there, it's already starting to tack up there at the top. So I'll add a little more. Now, another thing you can do at this point is you could take a paper towel and some lacquer thinner, okay, and just kind of wipe the edge. And that helps smooth things out as well. Make sure you don't have any coming out on the outside of your quarter panel. Because like I said, it'll cover up with high build and blend in and look kind of like factory. I think I'll leave it at that. Now down here in this corner, same thing. I'm just going to put some on my finger and kind of press it into that corner. And leave it at that. So now I want to do this section right here. This is the gap between the deck filler panel and the sail panel or the roof line. And if I put this chrome in place, you can really see that it's only a couple of inches that will be exposed, but I'm still going to fill that gap. In order to do that, I'm going to do the same thing I did on the quarter panel, and I want to create an edge. So I'll put this in place, this piece of tape. Run that up. Now the hard part here is, how do you address this other side? You can do it with a piece of tape. And this upper section I'm not too worried about because, again, it'll be concealed by the trim. In fact, what you can do, if you want to, is add a little piece of tape back here at the edge, at the corner. So you create a stop point for the sealer. So again, I'm going to just use my glove, keeping lacquer thinner and a paper towel handy. And there it is. I'll show you a close-up in a second. So that gap is filled. There's a little bit of overlap up here where the tape kind of pulled it, but that's okay. It's behind the trim. The important area is down here, what will be seen. I also, once I pulled that tape off, I did take my pinky and just kind of did a little swipe in this corner just to transition it down so it blended into the flow of the panel. I don't think that I'm going to mess with this at all, as I said previously. So next up is this back section. Okay, so there's a variety of ways to do this. Again, you can use the short brush, which I will use for some of this, but I want to show you something. Consider where your pieces overlap. So in this case, this extension covers all of these seams except for right here. So that's my more critical, let's say, area, but I still need to put seam sealer here. Again, I'm going to put it all in these different areas, and that can be done simply enough with the brush. Again, keeping my lacquer thinner handy just in case. So what I want to do is get some on the brush. I'm not putting a lot on there, and I'm just going to brush it into those spaces. It's more about keeping the moisture out than cosmetics at this point. And this is just one option. If you wanted to, you could use your glove and finger and press it into place, and it would be just fine. And I may still do some of that. Now I'll also point this out. When you're doing stuff like this, pay attention to the holes and stuff where like these bolts go through. Any kind of place where you can add some material that may interfere with the fit. So once this is dry, I will make sure that extension fits properly. And if I need to make any adjustments, I'll need to do that before I get it into paint or primer, my next round of primer. So just keep those thoughts. Like I said, if you need to, use your glove, but like here, I may have to touch this up a little with the lacquer thinner and the towel, because I don't like it overhanging that much. You can verify how that's going to look carefully, all hidden. So just take your time with it. Now you could also put a little lacquer thinner on your glove if you wanted to, if you want to smooth that up. Not required. Now this out here on this edge, I'll remove some of that. Now, what I would like to do is make a little smoother transition in this area, because even though it's not really seen, or it'd be very hard to see, I still want it to look decent. Now you could put some tape on here if you wanted to, but I'm just going to use my glove. Okay. I'm good with that. Now, this would have had a factory, maybe brush mark type of look to it. And I can't replicate that with this brush in particular, but I can come close, I think. So if I just brush this across, and I'll clean that edge up, because I don't know exactly, how they did this back in the day. I can't imagine it was very technical. So, if I need to, I'll adjust the appearance later. And for now, I just want to get it on. And again, the old friend, lacquer thinner, right? So in this case, I'm going to smooth this up just a little bit. Just run my glove across it. And then clean up that lower edge. And you can do more or you can do less. These are just some ideas for you. Okay, another thing I wanted to point out, you have the seam right here in the back. See if I can show you that, where the quarter panel and the rocker panel meet. So make sure you tape that and add seam sealer like I showed you on the other side. But what I want to also point out is I had replaced the outer wheelhouse on this car. So that means there is a seam that runs between the two wheelhouse halves and also the overlap. And this is kind of hard to show you with the tire in place. I don't plan on pulling it right now, but if I use that brush again and I just kind of backfill the inside of that, pack it into that overlapping piece of the two panels, just to make sure no water gets inside the car. And obviously, if you have any kind of hole exposed, whether it's from a pitted weld or anything like that, go ahead and add seam sealer. Because ultimately, when this is done, I'm going to spray undercoating on this anyway. But if I can have those holes taken care of up front ahead of time, then that undercoating will just go on top of all that. So if you have to, again, glove, press it into any of those holes. I know you can't see exactly where I'm going, but I think you get the idea. And of course, this, maybe you can see part of that, same deal, get some on the brush,
and just work it into that overlap. It takes time. And while I'm here, another thing I want to point out, what I do is where the seam is, the overlap for the wheelhouse and the quarter, I'll just get some on my fingertip and put it in that overlap all the way around to make sure that's sealed. So, you know, maybe I'm not trying to overstate the obvious, but any holes or anything that are underneath the wheel well or in that area, go ahead and address those. Make sure you get some seam sealer in there and take care of it. So I'm going to finish doing this section here. Maybe I'll do another camera shot, I don't know, but that's what I'm working on. It may be hard to see, but I've done that whole overlap, and then in the back, all that as well. I did that on both sides, and now I've talked about it briefly. What I want to do, I've added some material there, and I know I can't replicate the wavy kind of look that they have, but that's okay. I'm not worried about the trunk being displayed. I just want it watertight. So now what I'll do is I'll come inside here and I'll do the inside of any of these overlaps. Again, you know, trying to keep water out. So I may use a brush, I may use the glove, whatever it takes, and once I get that covered, I'll give you another look at it. One other area, as I said, I'm going to add some sealer to is along this seam around the cowl. I've looked at these little pieces here that overlap the apron. I don't see any value in adding any down here. I mean, you might put a swipe on top of this. You know, the fender's going to come up and cover most of it anyway, so it wouldn't hurt maybe to put some out here, but my focus is out on this area. So you could use a brush, you can use your fingers. As you can see, I have a fresh pair of gloves because once they start getting really gummed up, it's just not worth it. So it's almost like, you know, playing with peanut butter or something, in a sense. Or maybe icing. Maybe icing is a better word, not peanut butter. Peanut butter is a bit thicker. Okay. Other than that, look for areas that are exposed, you know, that are going to get water in them. You might add some on top of the torque box right here. I have a little area exposed, so I'll put some on top of that. And again, this will all get undercoated again anyway, so it doesn't hurt. Overall, it's up to you. Find these places, seal them, and protect your car. Well, you can see that's all seam sealed. I did add some to the top here, as I mentioned, fill in those little cracks. One around the base there, the two openings where the spot welds are for the kick panel, around the rocker, on top of the torque box, and any gaps that were created when I replaced the aprons. I didn't go all the way to the top because this panel would have to come off to get behind that, so I just went to that point. I did the same on the other side. Same area, torque box, all that sort of thing. Went around. I guess I could put some up here. I didn't do that yet. I can take care of that yet. I think it looks good. The other thing I did was, and it's really hard to show you this, but I did come in on the back side here and push into any gap that was created between the quarter and the wheelhouse. So made sure that was all filled. And otherwise, you know, things are looking good. I did go around that area again where some of that original material is gone. I'm not trying to replicate that. I'm not, you know, this car is, I'm more worried about the outside looking great. Of course, the interior and all that, and the trunk, you know, you put some carpet in here or something and it's all covered up anyway. All around those areas. I don't know if you can see. And of course back here in this gap that was there. So, yep, things are looking good. A little more cleaning up. I've got a little bit more sanding to do on the driver's side rocker. And then I think I'm ready for the next video, which will be masking and another round of high build.
All right, I think things are looking good. Now, the next video is going to be masking the car and getting another round of high build on the car, and hopefully everything goes well. I'm going to probably thin the high build a little more so that it acts kind of like a sealer and get everything in the same color. I'll go over it again, you know, maybe even with guide coat and make sure everything's right. And then the next step will be paint. So look forward to that. You know, I have people that support me on this channel. I have patrons. If you're interested in becoming a patron and seeing longer videos with more detail, there's a link in the description below. And I appreciate all of them that have been helping me with this venture. So I look forward to making the next video. But until that time, take care of yourselves. See ya.